have to share your idea. If you don't tell people, they don't know. And if they don't know, they can't help.
Because when you said hackathon, I imagined like all the bros in the
No.
basement coding. Okay, so you met your co-founder. You identified that you have these different skills and you want to work together. And then what happened?
Okay.
Amazing. Let's start. Kaitlin, welcome to the podcast. I can't believe we're in the studio now and we're doing video. Can you please start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so first off, thank you for having me. I've been a fan since you introduced me to it. My name is Kaitlin Fritz. I am an entrepreneur, enterprise educator, business coach. I've lived the life of being a startup founder, and now I am supporting others on that journey.
That's amazing. Now, can we start before you give us Entrepreneurship 101? Can we please start by you telling us a little bit more about your journey into startups and how you got into this world?
Yeah, so it was 100% absolutely not on purpose.
Okay.
I feel like that's important to say. I grew up in rural America. Genuinely probably couldn't spell entrepreneur until like my late teens. It's still a hard word to spell, guys.
It's a hard word to say as well.
Yeah. So I thought I was going to go more an education path, an academic, something like that. Moved to the UK for grad school back in 2017 and really fell in love with a problem. I was here learning about all these incredible arts and history and realized that, people back home or even people across the world weren't going to have access to this knowledge. And for me, that hit an chord because here I am learning and the privilege I'm having, but how can I make it more accessible for others? So I really took that attitude. I told my family, like, hey, I'm going to make arts more accessible. And they're like, what do you even mean? So I was like, I don't know yet. And that drew me to entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is really all about problem solving. And I started going to more events, being exposed, and finally did a London-wide hackathon, and that completely changed my trajectory. So that was my path to meeting my co-founder, combining our ideas together, and really opened my eyes to this whole startup world happening here in London.
That's really cool. And in terms of meeting a co-founder, a lot of people are resistant to like co-founders and this idea because they think like, oh, I have this amazing idea. Mm-hmm. How can I trust my idea with someone else I don't know? Or even someone I do know, like it's a big commitment because you have to grow that thing together. You have to trust them. What was that process like for you?
So because it was a hackathon, you were kind of forced together, if that makes sense. And I am really actually grateful for that because I think we complemented each other's skills. Like I was knowledgeable about one side of the business. She was very knowledgeable about another. And there wasn't that emotion. I love seeing friends found businesses together, but I realized a lot of my friends had similar interests, similar skill sets. So really getting outside the box was really helpful. And we realized that together we had two ideas that were similar but different, and bringing them together would be even stronger. And from that point on, I was like, hey, you have to share your idea. If you don't tell people, they don't know. And if they don't know, they can't help. So though it is your baby, and trust me, been there, I almost considered it like a step parent. Like you're going to do what's best for the baby, which means bringing in the right people, expertise, mentors, or co-founders. So it's a weird space to navigate because also, just to put this in perspective, she and I were from two different parts of the world. So we don't even have... she was from Ukraine, I was from America, we're meeting in England. It was a lot of getting to know each other on a professional, personal level, but that only proved our business to be stronger.
That's awesome. And before we dive into that dynamic a little bit more, just for anyone who doesn't know what a hackathon is, can you just quickly spell it out?
I feel like hackathons have changed. I feel like earlier it was like, you go, you code. Now it's really about like problem solving jams. So coming together with a theme, an idea, like a UN sustainable development goal, and bringing in different people ideas. So they're not just, one university. This was University of London wide. It can be open to anyone. So it's a really fun, usually like a day or two event.
Yeah, because when you said hackathon, I imagined like all the bros in the basement coding. So I just wanted to check because there'll be other people who might not know what that is. But what you said about the step parent is so interesting. And you said that you have different but complementary skills. How did you have that like self-awareness of this is what I'm good at and this is what I need to find? Because I think sometimes people are either too critical on themselves and they're like, oh, I'm not good at any of these things, or they're like a bit confident, I guess you can say, where I can do it, I can learn, I'm not technical, but I can learn. So how did you create that system of accountability and confidence so you could find the right person?
Yeah, so I think it is that. A lot of it is being self-aware and having that almost real talk with yourself. And a lot of times I also recommend bringing in a mentor, someone external, not your mom, not your best friend, because they're going to say you're great at everything. But to come in and be like, okay, like what have you consistently been good at, whether that's in your academic life, personal life, professional life, and mapping that out. And I've even created a tool now, know yourself before you onboard anyone else, because you really need to know so you can identify those gaps and bring in the skills that is needed to build a strong team. Because without a strong team, you're not going to have a strong business.
That's so important. Okay, so you met your co-founder, you identified that you have these different skills and you want to work together. And then what happened?
Well, it was a very, I would say, like roller coaster ride. So also to put it in perspective, you know, the visa situation. I was on a student visa. It was going to run out, and it was kind of a decision like, hey, are we going and really like committing on this full time? Are we going to dive in? Because if so, we need start it, or at that time it was graduate entrepreneur visas. And it was one of those moments where I was like, why not? Like, I'm already here. The worst thing that can happen is I go back home. So we head down. I was doing a dissertation while building a startup, applying for visas. But together, I think we made a lot of headway. And the moment all of that fell into place, we're like, okay, we're really onto something.
That's amazing. And you said that you were doing your dissertation, you were starting your company, you were doing copious amounts of admin work, doing visa stuff. Yeah. So how did you balance all of that? Like, not just in terms of physically getting things done, but also not getting burnt out and mentally managing like all the things on your plate?
Yeah, so I feel like maybe we're similar personalities. I feel like I'm someone my plate has always been full. So if it's like not full, I can get very bored. But it really was a lot of time management and being able to segment my days of like, okay, early morning we're doing writing because that's when I'm productive. Afternoon we're gonna go down to the startup space. I don't know how I did it. Probably a lot of coffee as well. But it all worked out. And then after that, definitely took a few days to recover.
That's awesome. And if there are any students who are watching this who want to start their own idea, what advice would you give them to manage like starting their thing, finishing their studies, doing all their like social life, work life, like all those things on the side?
Yeah, so I think there's a hierarchy of needs. So obviously, if you're listening, please don't like, you've been working hard on your degree, run through the finish line if you can.
Do your homework,
yeah,
please.
do your homework. Just run through the finish line, because honestly, for me, it was like, okay, this is going to be done in 3 months. I can finish this in 3 months. But also be more diligent about managing your time, managing your energy, and managing your networks. Because I think, once again, if you can bring the right people in to support you, and if you know yourself the way you work best, you can really become a powerhouse as one person or as a team. So that's what I would recommend.
That's really interesting. And that links kind of to my next question about like your community. So how did you navigate that? Because maybe this is not the case, but I'm assuming that you were surrounded by people who were probably going into 9-to-5 jobs when at university, kind of following a more conventional route. And then you're trying to start your own thing. That can be quite intimidating. It can be lonely. And also you can have this feeling of like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not following the conventional path. So what do you think about that? And what advice do you have around that?
Yeah, so I feel like personally, I was a little bit of a black sheep because I was doing a history of art degree. A lot of people go into curation, go into art sales, go into professorial pathways. And here I was being like, hi, I want to build a tech startup. So it was a little bit difficult having those conversations with my peers, but I think coming from that space made me more empathetic, and the skill sets I had as, I would say, like a humanities person really, I feel like, amplified our communication and our empathy in our tech business because I wasn't going in tech for tech's sake.
Yeah.
But my friends were like, we have no clue what you're doing. And it really was on me, and the onus was on me to find the right people. So being able to be uncomfortable at events, trying to meet people, going to where the founders were, or where people in the education technology space were, which was a lot of events, a lot of LinkedIn messages, a lot of rejection. But especially as a foreign founder, didn't have those networks, and it was on us to make them.
That's really interesting. And what advice would you give to someone who's going to their first like networking event and they're really awkward and they're like, oh, I don't know how to introduce myself. I don't have anything to talk about yet because maybe I'm just starting my company. It's not established yet. Or maybe I've just starting in the workplace, or I haven't even applied for jobs yet, or I don't have a position. Like, what would you say? How can someone make a compelling and interesting introduction when they aren't maybe in a place where they want to be in their career?
You know what I'm going to say. So I think you need to have a well-constructed elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you are just starting out, even if you feel like, oh my gosh, I have nothing to offer right now, if you're able to communicate who you are, why you're interested in the industry or the space or the venture, what you're looking to pursue, and how people can help you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can articulate that, that is impressive. Because if you can do that at 18, 25, 35, 55, you're able to capture people's attention and they're going to remember you. I think even if you feel like you're early stage or you might not have a lot to offer, being confident and being able to articulate what you want will, set you far above the pack.
That's really cool. And just for anyone who's watching who doesn't know what an elevator pitch is, can you quickly...
Yes. Thanks. I jumped to conclusions there. So an elevator pitch is where you are able to communicate yourself, your business in 60 to 90 seconds. And it's got its name through like the time-old tale of you're in an elevator with your dream partner, client. People are always like Mark Cuban for some reason. And you have from the ground floor to the top to make your case and get a meeting with them. So yes.
Amazing. So you started going to these events, you were starting your business. Can you tell the listeners what you were working on? Like, how did you go from idea to this amazing company? And can you tell everyone who's watching a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so we co-founded a company called Musemio, which was focused on making arts and cultural education more accessible for kids. So really taking different artifacts, narratives, histories from around museums, gamifying it in a really fun and exciting way, because if you're a kid staring at a Greek vase, not as exciting as hearing the story of the warrior on the Greek vase. And delivering that in a more multimodal fashion. So whether that's through an app, AR, VR, it was really about bridging those narratives.
That's really cool. And everyone who talks about entrepreneurship says, entrepreneurship is not glamorous, it's hard, it's lonely. And often in content, people don't see that side because we're in a nice studio and we're talking about like your success story. So just for anyone who's watching, like without discouragement, because obviously everything is hard and you choose your hard and your pain and whatever, can you talk through some of the struggles that you went through and how you overcame them?
Yeah, I feel like I always joke that I have this like trophy cabinet of failures that nobody sees, but they are there. And I believe being more transparent about them. I mean, we all have highs and hurdles in entrepreneurship, but there were some epic, I don't want to call them mistakes, more learnings. Getting accepted on the App Store and then getting rejected the next day before a big launch. Navigating an international team. We had people in Europe, UK, Spain, all over the place. How do you deal with this? COVID itself, how do you build a business when the world is shut down?
Yeah.
But also I feel like there's those internal battles, especially as like female founders, we don't really talk about like imposter syndrome and kind of attitudes when you're in these investor meetings or you're having these conversations as like a young woman in tech. So it's one of those things where it's not to be discouraging. I think we're moving to a better place in an entrepreneurship ecosystem, but it is not the slick lights. It's a lot of emails. It's a lot of head down work to get those awards or those accolades.
And do you have any like mental or emotional kind of support things that you have in place to prevent these like bad days? What do you do to take care of yourself when you're feeling low after a hard day at work?
Yeah, so I think having people around you who that can support you, preferably not in the business space. You know, you almost want to decompress with someone who is not going to talk like go-to-market strategy with you. That's not exactly the fun of. So having like I have an amazing husband, well now husband, but a partner at the time. My family, even though they were in the U.S., very very supportive. But also prioritizing things for your own mental health. Like if you're a creative, taking like 25 minutes to paint will recharge your brain than sending that email, or going on a run or a walk just to like see nature rather than blue light. You need to take care of yourself, because I do think there were periods, especially during COVID, where you're working so hard that it will physically take a tax on you. And if you're not well, your business isn't going to be well.
This is so true. And it kind of links to this idea of when people talk about entrepreneurship or even self-development, they say you have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed. It is your number one priority. Like no sleep, no food, no friendship. Like it's you and your business and you and your goals until you succeed. How do you navigate that like mentality and make sure that you have a balanced life, as well as balancing all the things that you're doing? You make sure that you make time for your community, for your health, for your creative pursuits. That must be really hard, like knowing that you can always, because you don't have a boss, like you can always do the extra bit of work and when to turn off and focus on the other parts of your life.
Yeah, so I'm 100% going to say in the beginning, I was terrible at that. Like I was all in all the time, very quote unquote hustle culture, missing like family events or like a date night. I remember I had to skip a cooking class because there was an investor who might maybe stop by. And I realized, yes, you need to work on your business, but like you still have a life to live. And putting boundaries was something that was very difficult. But once you establish those, you can work at your fullest capacity in those hours of the day and go to bed at night refreshed for tomorrow and not sending emails at, 11 o'clock at night. So it was something, I'm going to be honest, like I had to work through, but now that's something I really encourage founders from very early stage to do, because you don't want to be burnt out or to have health issues or even mental health issues around your business.
That's so, so, so important. And in terms of like the successes, because now we've talked about the struggles. So you have done some incredibly cool things.
Thanks.
Before I ask you about some more specific ones, do you want to share some of your accolades with the audience?
Yeah, so I think there were some cool ones, I will admit. Like we, so from a personal front, Global Talent Visa, that was a 40-page application, but really great to have. Forbes 30 under 30. We've gotten different like university awards as well for our respective universities. Yeah.
Now, this is amazing. Forbes 30 under 30 is something that a lot of people have on their vision board from like a young age, or say that they want as a goal. It's one of those huge milestones that a lot of people like dream of reaching. So can you talk us through like first getting there and then actually like how it felt once you got there and that process?
Yeah, it's even fitting because I feel like all the Forbes lists are coming out and I was like, so we applied, I think the year before, and it is an application. There's a whole process. There's due diligence. We made it to maybe like the first or second step, and then we're told, we're not the right fit right now, which we were really early, but hey, you got to go for it. And we applied the second year, and we were in a much better place with our business, where we were, went through the first step, went through the second step, went through due diligence, because obviously, you can't say you have a bajillion sales and not be able to prove you have a bajillion sales. And then you just don't hear anything. which is kind of weird.
Not you getting ghosted by Forbes.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well, here we go. And it was at like 7 a.m. I think we were in somewhere in the pandemic region. I got like 5 missed phone calls from my co-founder. And I was like, what happened? Like, did we mess something up? Like, is the app store down? And I just pick up the phone and she's screaming. And she's like, check the website. And I was like, what are you talking about? And there was our picture on the website. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, they don't tell you. You just find out. Which was crazy. And I remember just being so shocked and honored. I walked down to the local co-op and we got orange juice and champagne, but we couldn't celebrate together because I'm pretty sure this was still in like bubble season. And it was just a really, really cool feeling. Obviously, my family and friends in the US weren't awake yet, so I kind of had to wait a couple hours and then call everyone there. And it was a huge honor. But I do think what I recognized is, the next day you still need to wake up and go to work. Like, a lot of people feel like this is the Willy Wonka ticket, and it is a massive honor. I'm not downplaying that. But it's still your job to leverage that to open doors, to validate with investors, to continue to work on the mission and the vision you want to provide in the world. So I think that was also a very humbling moment. And I tell founders that now. It's awesome. Celebrate it. The community is awesome. The events, everything. But it's still down to you. And what you want to do with your business. So that was it's a nice little like yin yang moment.
It sounds so interesting because you say that like you had this huge moment and then the next day you had to go back to work.
Yeah.
It kind of links to this whole idea of it being a marathon and you have to keep going, and it's not like you reach a destination, because a lot of people when they set these goals they think like, oh, once this happens I will have made it. And they think of the goal so far away that they don't have to consider what happens after they reach it, because it's like, okay, yeah, once I hit Forbes on 30 under 30, I've made it. Once my business makes £1 million or dollars, like I've made it. What would you say to those people in maybe how they could reevaluate those goals to get out of this like making it mentality and realize that you never like quote unquote make it, you just have to be it?
Yeah, I feel like that was something we had to like recognize as well, because you feel like, oh my gosh, I've made it. You're at the top of the world, but then you're like, now what? And I really think it is about that continual incremental progress, like every day getting better, every day making an impact. And it's one of these things where people say, oh, was that like the highlight of your career? And I think it was a really great highlight, but as a founder, seeing people use your product, getting feedback, like you still get those same sort of joyous moments, but you don't appreciate them as much. And it wasn't until after Forbes that I was like, wait, I talked to like 3,000 kids around the world about this. Like, why didn't I celebrate that just as much as celebrating this? And I think that kind of shifted the mentality of celebrating the little wins, along the way, because those are the ones that will get better as well.
And now what's your little celebration ritual you do when you have a little win?
I don't know. I feel like there's always like a little happy dance. I think just like pausing as well, because as a founder, you're like, okay, that was great. On to the next thing, on to the next thing. And actually being like, okay, no, for like 10 minutes, like we're going to soak this in and like enjoy this moment. And it makes you more cognizant and just more grateful for the journey, because you need that in a startup journey.
That's beautiful. And I want to link back to what you said earlier about being a female founder as well. Mm-hmm. So in terms of both the struggles and the successes, it can be really different for female founders, especially like with the intersections of race and everything. And what was that experience like? Can you talk us through a little bit about both the struggles and successes as being like a woman in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so just to contextualize, this was a few years ago, but I do feel like we as a team, because we were a dual female founded team, we had to work harder to get the same credibility. We saw other mixed gender teams, all male teams doing similar things, getting, I don't know if it's more investment, more kind of press. And it felt like we had to work harder. And I think women today would probably also say the same thing, the phrase of like working twice as hard for half the respect. But I do think we're getting better. I genuinely do. And I think as a female founder, finding other female founders, like communities like this, where we can empower each other, where you can have that friend, that colleague, that confidant. And I think the female founder community is a powerhouse. Like, I think there's so much talent, so much drive, but also so much support rather than, competition. It's more about collaboration. And that is so beautiful. And I think, we're just going to continue that momentum. Fingers crossed.
100%. And one thing that I have really, really, really benefited from in this space is mentorship and good female mentorship. Like, I would not be sitting here in the studio on the sofa with you if I didn't have the mentors that I did. So who have been some good mentors to you, and what do you think of mentorship as a coach as well?
I love mentorship. Like, I think it is amazing, and it's something that is underutilized because there's a lot of really great talent out there. And all you need to do is ask. Like, people are, I would say, kinder than you imagine them to be. I have amazing mentors. I have one mentor who's been with me since the day I applied for my visa. So, Juliana, shout out to you. And I have mentors who are men. I have mentors who are women. I have mentors in the UK. I have mentors abroad. It's really about relationships. And I've been a mentor, which is really cool. I won the Hustle Award for being Mentor of the Moment a couple years back because it's really about having authentic conversations, vulnerable conversations, and getting insights and support where you are at that journey and where you want to go. So whoever's listening, like, if you don't have a mentor, reach out. It will really help steer you and kind of shepherd you on this crazy journey of life.
Yeah, like, my advice is, my friend calls it like a friend crush, but I take it further and call it like a business crush, or like a role model crush, I guess. When you see someone that you think is cool and is maybe even just a few steps ahead of you,
Absolutely.
Reach out. Like, what's the worst they'll say? Like, they might just not respond to you, or they might say that they're too busy. But it's always worth it. So going back to your coaching, and we met at like a university mentorship, like coaching program. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about that side of your work? Because I think you're so brilliant in that.
Thanks. So it wasn't until like the pandemic-y times that people started coming to me for like advice or questions, or like, how did you do this? And I realized universities are awesome. I love universities. But there's kind of a gap between like theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. And I feel like I'm someone who's really practical, like grassroots. So I started getting involved with like university accelerators and incubators and coming in and giving sessions and workshops. And we just did one that was 6 weeks together. So thanks for bearing with me there.
Likewise.
And it's really about fostering those ideas in a safe space, but providing you with practical knowledge. So whether it's the idea you stick with, whether these are frameworks that you can then apply for it to a new idea. Like for me, I'm like, hey, let's get you from idea to as close as launch as physically possible. And I love that. Like, I get to meet people like you and incredible like entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, places of the world, academic standing. And it's something I really, really love. And hopefully you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. And someone who hasn't attended one of your programs because of like geographical reasons or whatever, what would you say are your Kaitlin's 3 top tips?
Oh, okay. So my first is fall in love with the problem, not the solution, because we get so solution oriented that we completely forget about the people and the problem we're trying to solve. And a lot of startups fail because they're not solving a problem. I think my second tip is don't be afraid to fail. Just try and fail faster. Assumptions need to be tested. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of weird looks. But the sooner you do it, the more data you're going to gather and make better decisions. And I think the third one is, like I mentioned earlier, being able to communicate. There's a lot of really good ideas out there, but if you can't communicate it, how is the world or your target audience going to benefit?
That's super, super interesting. And if you want to learn more, like, please check out Kaitlin's podcast as well. I'm going to link it down below. But can you also share your journey with the audience of why you started that and a little bit more about that? Because like that's really a masterclass in everything that you need to know about entrepreneurship as well.
Thanks. You're being too kind. You're being too kind. No, I think it was one of these things where it was on my heart during the pandemic because I was like, people are coming to me with these questions. But in typical, I feel like, you know, type A personality, sometimes you get too in the weeds. And it was the moment where I was like, no, like, it's not going to be perfect. I teach people all the time, do it scrappy, do it early. I need to do it scrappy and do it early. Take my own advice, take your own medicine. So I went out there and launched the podcast on key issues and themes I would talk to student founders and entrepreneurs about. So even things like, how do you make the jump from being free to paid? That is something that, everybody loves a free workshop or a free service provider, but we all need money. Or what is business model, like, what does that even mean? How do I pick the right one? So it was those kind of conversations that sparked my desire to have these episodes. And also, there are awesome entrepreneurs out there who don't get the Forbes 30 under 30, or who don't get the big press release that I believe deserve to be celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was any way I could use my platform to share their story, like, that is amazing.
That's beautiful. And I really liked your first episode, actually, which was about, like, being underestimated by, like, the people around you, and also, like, yourself, right? And underestimating yourself. So if you could go back and talk to Kaitlin from when you started your journey and you started your company, what advice would you give, or what would you say to be like, it's okay, like, we're here now.
Yeah, I would just tell her, and probably everyone, that, like, just, one, keep moving. Like, things are going to, explode. Things aren't going to fall into the right place. But if you can keep moving every day and know why you're moving there, that's really important. And also just start earlier. I feel like we can sit on our ideas, simmer on them. For me, sometimes people simmer on them for years. But the sooner you go out there and take that risk and that leap and that test, you're going to know if you're on the right track or not. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice for younger me.
That's amazing. And since we've looked back, we're going to look forward now.
Mm-hmm.
What's something that you're excited for this new chapter of your career and life?
Yeah, so I think reaching more students, entrepreneurs, individuals who have really great ideas, and supporting them throughout that journey is something that absolutely gives me life. And doing it in a way that is accessible and approachable for where you are on those journeys. So hopefully be on the lookout. There should be some exciting things coming down the pipeline. But obviously, boots on the ground, trying to get more entrepreneurs, more diverse entrepreneurs, more ideas coming to fruition.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to link all your information down below. But if, like, people want to find you, how can they do that?
Yeah, definitely Instagram me at _Kaitlin Fritz _. LinkedIn, also pretty active on there. Or don't be afraid to email me. I love trying to, if you're in London, Cambridge, UK, maybe we can cross paths for a coffee. But if not, a virtual chat. I would love to meet you all.
Yes, anyone has any questions, please reach out to me or Kaitlin. Like, we really care about these topics, so we'd love to help. And I always like to end the podcast with a theme of gratitude.
Love that.
What are you grateful for today?
So this is going to sound cheesy, but I'm really grateful for meeting you. Because first off, what you guys don't understand, and I'm going to give Mahika a big shout out, is she came up to me in the session and was like, hey, you came out with so much confidence in what you're doing and what you're working on. And just the way you took that leap and that jump, and you've made this platform, like, I'm grateful to be on it, and I know it's gonna reach more ears, more miles than you could possibly imagine. And you're just a testament to, like, that empowered confidence. You help others. So I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you too. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for next week, where we'll be back in the studio, which is crazy to say.
It's beautiful.